Welcome to DFS Karma, where we talk about our favorite fantasy sports plays for football, basketball, baseball, and pretty much everything else. Be sure to check out and create an account with all of our partners, such as MonkeyKnifeFight.online, PrizePicks.online, and StatHero.online. Use the promo code KARMA on any of these sites to get an exclusive deposit bonus. And don't forget to check out all of our free fantasy content on DFSKarma.com, as well as our own premium plays. Without further ado, let's get the show on the road. Please welcome today's hosts.
What is up, Karma Nation? Welcome into the Week 5 edition of the Perfect Pivot, our GPP podcast. I'm your host, Justin Bales, joined here by Ben Hostler, and we have a pretty solid week for you guys. 2 games have been postponed off of the 1 p.m. slate for DraftKings and FanDuel. It is the Buffalo Bills, Tennessee Titans, and then obviously the Denver Broncos, New England Patriots. They were moved to Monday and Tuesday, so for season long, assuming no more positive tests, you guys will be good. Outside of that, the Jets had someone test positive, but they have announced that it is a false positive, and they will be playing that game at 1 p.m. as scheduled. So before we get into everything, Ben, how's it going?
It's going good. I've been laughing this whole time because we had to redo this intro because my mic wasn't on the first time that we did this. So I'm not even going to repeat myself, but I'm doing good, and I am excited for week 5.
Yeah, I completely agree. If you want to check out all of our content, you can at dfskarma.com. We have quite a bit of free content for you guys. dfskarma.com/shop is where you can go to pick up our NFL package. It's $15 a week if you want to try us out for a week, or you can get a month long. Obviously, Ben and I believe that is just an absolute steal. Because you're more or less getting our content. Let's just get right into things, though. At quarterback, if you're paying up, I mean, Dak Prescott and Deshaun Watson are the pretty clear two. I do believe Lamar Jackson probably gets a little bit of ownership. He's under 8K, and last year we saw him absolutely torch Cincinnati on the ground, so some people will probably chase that. I do think that the 2 chalk options, though, are Prescott and Watson, so excluding them, who are you looking at up here?
Yeah, I have a really tight quarterback pool this week. I'm basically stacking Panthers, Falcons in cash games, and then I'm going to be playing a lot of Lamar and Patrick Mahomes in tournaments. So Mahomes could be like the guy that I talk about here. He's just going to be so much lower on. Like, everyone's going to be playing Clyde Edwards-Helaire in this matchup against the Raiders. Obviously, huge team total, 34.5 points for the Chiefs. So Mahomes could be the guy that I'm going to talk about here, but there's one guy I want to talk about at quarterback, really, and it's the only guy that I would consider, like the only guy that I'm considering playing in like really big field, like a Millie Maker type play, and it's Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow has had a really solid floor for being a rookie. 17 DraftKings points is his floor, lowest output we saw from him, and it was in his first ever NFL game, and it came with him only throwing for 190 passing yards, right? So even with only throwing for 190 yards, he still managed 17 DraftKings points. He's topped 300 passing yards in every week since then. And the Ravens have actually not been as dominant on defense as we've expected. They're giving up the 9th most passing yards in the NFL through the first 4 weeks. I think that Burrow obviously has the upside with his legs that we've talked about a couple times, so he does that have that in the tank if he needs it, and it kind of adds to his ceiling. But I think that the Ravens are going to put up a ton of points, which you kind of just alluded to when talking about Lamar. So I think, we saw Burrow in that game. They were losing to the Browns, throw the ball 60 times. I think this is another game that he could throw the ball a lot. They play relatively fast, which can hopefully counteract how slow the Ravens play a little bit. And I think that he'll, I don't think the Bengals are going to win or anything, but I do think they'll be able to put up some points. So I do think Burrow's interesting in big field tournaments.
Yeah, I like that. I have no issues whatsoever with him. My pick is going to be Kyler Murray. Dude, it just seems weird that Kyler Murray's not projected for more ownership. It's like the Jets aren't good. Just Brett Rippon just tore them apart on last Thursday. Kyler Murray has scored 24 plus fantasy points in every week. He does it with his legs. He hasn't really flashed the ridiculous arm yet this year. He has yet to top 300, although he did throw for 3 touchdowns last week. So, you you're not really going to get, or you can't really project 3 touchdowns, but he's probably going to throw for more than 133 yards. But his floor is there because of his legs. Like if you look at it, Deshaun Watson is going to be the chalk this week, and I get it. I have no problems with it. But Murray has outscored Watson's top game in each of his 4 starts in 2020. And obviously his ceiling is he's already dropped 33. I believe it was week 2. So I really like Kyler Murray, and you don't really have to be too worried about the Jets at this point because they're 2 of the faster paced teams in the entire NFL. So it's going to be a pace up game unless like all of a sudden Joe Flacco decides to slow it down, which I wouldn't be shocked, but I just don't see them stopping Murray.
Yeah, I think that's a really good call. Someone that I wasn't on a ton, but definitely makes sense in tournaments that I probably should get some exposure to him somewhere.
Dropping down, I feel like this is kind of weird because I believe that you and me both think that Daniel Jones is going to get the ownership if you pay down, but there's some places that are saying Teddy Bridgewater gets it. I know you're on Bridgewater for cash. So even though we think Daniel Jones gets the ownership, let's just eliminate both of them from the pool at this point. Is there anyone, I know you already talked about Burrow, which is just a $100 pivot off of Bridgewater, but is there anyone else that you would be considering down here?
Yeah, it's really probably just Burrow for me. I could see maybe like taking a shot on Garoppolo just because the 49ers have a 30-point implied team total. They're going to have to score points some way, and literally no one will play Garoppolo. He didn't look good before he got hurt, and now he's been out. So no one will play him. So I could see maybe doing that in tournaments, but it's really like Teddy, like I'm gonna be so overweight on Teddy, and I do agree. I think Daniel Jones probably ends up higher owned than him on both sites. So I'm gonna be overweight on him. I'm gonna be overweight on Lamar, Mahomes, and I like Burrow. So that's really probably the guys that I'm focusing on this week.
I like it. I'm going to add Gardner Minshew to the pool. I really like Jacksonville against Houston, who just has a bad defense, and Minshew's going to have to be throwing because most likely Houston's going to be winning this game. If you look at their passing yards allowed per game, it's not a lot by Houston, but it's because teams just aren't throwing against them. They're extremely bad in adjusted yards per attempt. It's not a good defense whatsoever. And Minshew has flashed a decent floor, excluding the game against Miami, which is why I think Minshew goes under-owned because everyone watched it and he just looked terrible. He's been good this year, and I think there's a few guys that you can really pair him with, but Minshew's the guy that I'm probably attacking around that price range.
Yeah, I think that's a really good game. Obviously, expect points to be scored there, and I don't know. Houston's defense has not been good at all. So we've actually seen Minshew is another guy that, like Burrow, kind of does have sneaky upside with his legs too. We haven't really seen it this year, but he does have that ability.
Yeah, I agree with that. If you move to running back, I feel like, correct me if I'm wrong, but basically every team or every cash game more or less is just going to play 3 running backs, right? And it's going to be Ezekiel Elliott, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and Mike Davis. I think Kareem Hunt's going to get ownership, but I'm relatively confident that Davis, Edwards-Helaire, and Elliott are just going to be the chalk 3, right?
Yeah, you should be playing those 3 in cash games, and I would assume most people will.
So I mean, cross those 3 out, and you hit me with who you like here.
Yeah, Matt made a really strong point on James Robinson on the Game Theory podcast, so I like him, but Hunt is going to be the guy for me. I do think he will get some ownership, but it's not going to, like, he's sandwiched in between CEH and Davis, so I think that, not a lot of people will end up playing him. Obviously, like, his role is so valuable in that offense with Chubb out. We know that they'll use him in the passing game. I think he scored twice on passes inside the 10-yard line or inside the 15 maybe. So they're throwing it to him in the red zone as well. And Darius Leonard being out for Indy is a huge deal. Obviously, that really hurts their defense, but it's going to help the Browns be able to run the ball a little bit more. I think that, the Browns have one of the best offensive lines in football, so I wasn't super worried about the matchup for tournaments anyways, but him being out definitely is a positive for the Browns, and I think that the Browns probably can win this game, in which it's going to come on the back of Hunt, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with that. Hunt's one of my top options too, but I'll go down to Josh Jacobs. No one's going to play him because of game script. They're 11-point underdogs, but I would assume Gruden, being the old school coach that he is, don't you think he's going to try to limit possessions and just hammer Jacobs early in the game? It would just make the most sense to do that now.
Yeah, and for a while, I don't know if he still is. I haven't checked, but Josh Jacobs was leading the NFL in touches for at least a couple weeks.
Yeah, he dropped a little the last 2 weeks. But like, I don't expect Las Vegas to go out there and win the game or anything, but Kansas City is really bad against the run, and it's not that often you're going to get a guy that could touch the ball 30 times in a game at super low ownership, especially since he's only 6,300. So I have no problems whatsoever with Josh Jacobs. I think he's a really good tournament option, but I will say if Kansas City just scores twice in like the first 5 minutes and immediately puts Las Vegas down, it's going to be really, really difficult for Jacobs to get anything whatsoever going. So he does come with a lot of risk.
Yeah, good tournament play though. I don't mind that at all.
Moving to wide receiver, I believe if you're paying up, it's most likely going to be Amari Cooper. I do think Calvin Ridley gets some ownership just because of the game. A lot of people are going to use Carolina, Atlanta, I think. But I think if there's one guy up here that's going to get the ownership, it's probably Amari Cooper. So is there anyone expensive you're looking at, excluding Amari Cooper, obviously?
No, I like Ridley a lot. I think Tyreek Hill is really interesting in tournaments at 6,900. That just seems too cheap for him. He scored in every game this year. Obviously, the Raiders struggle with speed. So I think that that's just too cheap for him. So, like in my Mahomes lineup, I will have Tyreek Hill. And I would consider Tyreek Hill even in non-Mahomes lineups just because of his price tag.
Yeah, I'm good with it. No issues whatsoever there. I'll drop down a little bit farther and go DJ Chark. He's been dealing with injuries and he hasn't seen a ridiculous amount of volume, but he's been arguably the most efficient wide receiver in the NFL this season. And he's coming off of a massive game. I already outlined, I don't like Houston's defense. I don't think that they're very good. And if I'm playing Gardner Minshew, I 100% will be stacking him with Chark. I'll say I will stack him with Robinson as well. I'll do the 3-man with the running back wide receiver. But Chark coming off of 9 targets, which doubled what he had before. His second most was week 2. He had 4. But 9 targets, he caught 8 for 95 yards, and more importantly, 2 touchdowns. I'm guessing they're just going to go to him in the red zone. If you have a guy that's playing as efficiently as he is, it doesn't make sense not to use him in the red zone. So I think they'll keep going there. And I have a hard time believing that this Houston defense is going to completely stop Jacksonville. So Chark, I think, makes one of the top options for tournaments.
No, I'm a big Chark fan. I played him last week in my Burrow lineup. Obviously, he had a big game. He never gets ownership. He's just one of those guys that just doesn't ever get any attention.
It's there. Yeah. Dropping down, it's a little crazy because CeeDee Lamb's 6K, and you would think that people are just going to pay for Dallas, you know what I mean? But DJ Moore at 6,000 and Robbie Anderson at 5,900 are both likely to get ownership. If I have to say one of the two, I would assume Robbie Anderson at this point gets more. He's 100 cheaper, and most are viewing him as the wide receiver 1 in Carolina. It's hard not to, especially since he's getting the majority of the red zone looks compared to Moore. So excluding DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson, who are you looking at down here?
Yeah, so Hollywood Brown is one of my favorite plays on the slate, but I've talked a lot about him on the Game 3 podcast. I wrote about him in multiple articles, so I'm going to go with Tyler Boyd to stack with Burrow. I like targeting Baltimore in the slot. We talked about them giving up the 9th most passing yards, so it's not like their secondary has been locked down. And while they do have a good secondary, it's easier to attack them over the middle of the field than it is on the outside with the corners that they have. So I think that Boyd in the slot is a really good spot. And he's really earned the trust of Burrow. His last 3 games, 8, 13, and 8 targets in those 3. Got unlucky with a called back touchdown last week. So in my Burrow lineup that I make, I will have Boyd, and I also will probably have Boyd in my Lamar lineup as well.
I like that. I have no issues whatsoever. I play Boyd a lot more than I thought I was going to coming into the season.
Yeah.
I'll go with Michael Gallup. He's going to be the lowest owned of the 3 Dallas receivers, but he still comes with more or less just as much upside as anyone because he's such a big play threat. And I believe Bradbury is expected to shadow Amari Cooper. Outside of Bradbury, New York doesn't have anyone in the secondary that I'm even relatively worried about. So not that I think Cooper's going to get shut down, not that I'm worried about playing him. I really like him this week. But Michael Gallup's going to get a much better matchup. Same with CeeDee Lamb, but I expect Gallup to get significantly less ownership than Lamb. He's only 600 cheaper. And I know Smith's out, which is a worry because Gallup, we've talked about 100 times with Matt. He needs time to develop his routes, but I don't know. I just feel like, doesn't this seem like the type of game where he just feels like he's going to go off?
Yeah, no, I don't disagree. I think you can play him every single week, and he's always going to be the lowest owned guy of the trio, right? So I never think that's a bad move.
The other option, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but Darius Slayton looks like he's going to be chalk. I get it. Dallas can't guard anyone. He's 4,800, but man, if I have to trust Darius Slayton in cash, it's gross. So are you even considering spending down here, or are you just going to play like the mid range and up at wide receiver?
Yeah, I like some of these cheap options. I know I've seen a lot of talk this week about how there is no good cheap options. I like Laviska Shenault a lot at 4,500. I think he's a really strong play. Someone that I'm going to be overweight on. But another one that I really like, 5,100 Russell Gage. No one is going to play Russell Gage. Everybody's going to play Calvin Ridley, or they're going to play Olamide Zaccheaus, who is 3K on DraftKings min price.
Yeah.
So that's going to give you low owned exposure to one of the best games on the slate and just an overall chalky spot. So you're going to get a little bit low ownership there. But I actually think Gage is kind of good. Like, I think he's better than Zaccheaus if you're just picking one of them. Obviously, that's why he's $2,100 more. But the Panthers run a really zone-heavy defensive scheme, so the slot receivers normally can kind of eat over the middle of the field against them. And it's fresh in everyone's mind that Zaccheaus had that big game the other night. But, I mean, Gage has always been the second option, if Julio's out. So I actually think Gage is a good way to get some low ownership to that game.
Yeah, I really like that call. I didn't really think too much about Gage prior, but I think that it's a really, really strong play. I don't know necessarily if there's anyone that I absolutely love down here. I think, and I don't want to say it, but I think Brandon Cooks at 41 makes sense. It just seems weird that they wouldn't at least try to get him involved in the offense. You know what I mean? Like, he had literally nothing last week.
Yeah, he had 0. From what Watson said after the game, I don't know. I watched the game off and on because I played Watson on FanDuel, but I wasn't really grinding watching it. I was watching a couple games, but from what Watson said after the game is that the Vikings schemed to take Cooks out of the game, which I don't know. I don't know how that makes any sense from
that can't possibly be true.
From a real life perspective. I don't know how that makes any sense, but that's what Watson said. So, I mean, whatever. I haven't really dug into that, but yeah, no one's going to play Cooks. Cooks was 40% owned on DraftKings this week, got 0 points. Literally, no one will play him.
Yeah, now he gets Jacksonville. They have a 30 implied total. If Jacksonville can even keep this relatively close, Houston's going to still be throwing the ball. I mean, he's 4,100. Like, I hate it as much as the next guy, knowing that he literally just dropped a 0. But Brandon Cooks, we know, has a ton of upside, and 4,100 is way too cheap for the matchup. So I have no issues just taking a shot at him in tournaments.
Yep.
On to tight end. It doesn't seem like this week is the pay up for Kittle week.
Yeah, I think Kittle, normally we never see expensive tight ends get that high in cash, but I do think Kittle will garner some ownership this week.
So, I mean, is there anyone you're paying up for that isn't George Kittle? Like, if you're paying up, are you just going him, or are you looking at anyone else?
Yeah, I like Darren Waller a lot. Obviously, he's going to act as the wide receiver one in this offense, how it's currently constructed. The Chiefs have not been super strong in the middle of the field as well. Another team that's kind of struggled in that aspect. And if the Raiders get down like we expect them to, they're gonna have to throw the ball. I'm assuming they're gonna be throwing it to Waller. He has a couple games with one with 16 and one with 12 targets. So we know the upside for like a 12 plus target day is there. And I definitely think he could come on Sunday. So I think he should probably be over 6K on DraftKings. I think 59 is a little bit too cheap because you're basically getting like a wide receiver one even at the tight end spot. So I just think he should be a little bit more expensive. So I think Kittle should probably be over 7K too. So I like Waller a little bit his price.
Yeah, I really like Waller too. Honestly, that's probably the guy that I was going to. I think I'll just say Mark Andrews. I have no problems with. We know he has 2 touchdown upside. I'm not worried about that ridiculous game that he had against Kansas City where he dropped everything in sight. It just doesn't bother me. But we'll talk about the other chalk option is likely just going to be Evan Ingram. You're just kind of going against Dallas at this point because their defense is so bad. Who around Ingram's price, or I guess we can just go below because there's not really a cheap guy that is chalky or anything. Around Ingram or below, who are you looking at?
Yeah, I wrote up Ebron in my cash article. I like him a lot, but I'm going to drop all the way down to Trey Burton at 2,900. Not someone I would play in cash, obviously. But if you're playing tournaments, like I'm always fine taking a really cheap tight end. The Browns are one of the flow charts that we like to target tight ends against. Burton's first game off IR was last week, got 5 targets. I mean, they have other tight ends. Obviously, they have Mo Alley Cox, who keeps scoring touchdowns, even though he's not on the field a ton. But I think, like,
so
Burton,
good, though.
Yeah, I like Mo Alley Cox. They just haven't been, like, with Burton back, they just didn't give him that much run. But he did score a touchdown. But yeah. I think Burton's obviously athletic enough to succeed in that matchup. And 2,900 is cheap. Like, he doesn't need to do much at that price to give you a decent score.
Yeah, I actually didn't really consider him, but now looking, I really like that. And I'd be willing to bet come tomorrow. I have him in at least one lineup, but my Derek Abram. Philly's just bad against the tight end. He saw 7 targets in his last game, scored a touchdown. Not that I think he has like ridiculous upside like Waller, but he's only 4,000. And, I'm willing to take the tight end against Philly. Kind of funny that you wrote him up in your cash article because I wrote him up in my tournament one as well. So I guess we're on to something. Yeah. I just don't think – I think he gets some ownership, honestly. It's just not going to be a lot. And like most people are just going to move to Evan Ingram, honestly. He's only 600 more. But I do really like Eric Ebram.
Yeah, I was pretty locked on Ingram all week, but I do currently have Ebron in both of my cash lineups on FanDuel and DraftKings. So.
I like to hear it, honestly. I feel like I've marked this down. He's going to score this week.
Okay. Hopefully he does. That would make me very happy. So.
All right. That's all we got for you guys. So if you like the video, go ahead, give us a thumbs up. Make sure you comment who you're pivoting to and who you're pivoting off of. If you enjoy our videos, obviously also subscribe and you can turn on notifications to see when they all come out. We have our props video that I believe dropped today. Ben does his cash process with Anthony. Ben and I generally are on the game theory with Sam or Matt, but that kind of rotates every Wednesday night. We obviously changed it this week because of Corona, but good luck to everyone this week and hope everyone does well.